to Cinema Boulevard. I hope you all... Episode 3. Trucking right along here to start the year. And it's been so far so good. At least film output wise. I wish I could say the same for what happened at the BAFTAs last night. We're not going to go too deep into the whole discourse of what's happened. Initially, what happened is I didn't watch it because I was all the way in Stillwater, Oklahoma last night, and
they didn't. No one watched it because they didn't air it live.
No, they didn't. It was all pre-recorded, which I guess is very interesting for a reward show. But initially, Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were up on stage. I think they were introducing centers or something along the lines. And I forgot the name of the individual, but this is an individual with Tourette syndrome. And as they were speaking, he said a slur, and obviously the internet is sort of up in arms about the whole thing. And I'm honestly, in my opinion, it's a complete failure on BAFTA's part. They knew the individual had Tourette syndrome, and they should have done something about it. I mean, regardless, it's still not a good word to say, either on public television or in real life. Very, very disheartening situation.
Yeah, when I saw the clip online at first, and my one thought was, why did they not edit this out? If anyone's familiar with broadcasting, either on television or on radio, you have something called tape delays, where that's used if anyone says something that is offensive or violates FCC regulations and guidelines. You can play it back so that it doesn't actually go onto the air. So why that didn't happen here is very, very questionable. And the BAFTAs, to their response to the matter, was not great either. So it all in all, it's a very unfortunate incident, and yeah, it's a lot of discussion about it online, and really, I think I saw potentially maybe the dumbest post I've ever seen during award season about this matter, which I think I sent to you, where someone said, will sinners benefit from this tragic incident?
Yeah.
And all I'm thinking is, why is that where your mind goes with this?
Yeah, because, at the end of the day, these are award shows, but it's you also got to realize that, what has happened here, is something that, unfortunately is, going to be discussed in a negative sense. You probably don't watch NFL, but I think I remember it was a few years ago. It was the Buffalo Bills Cincinnati Bengals game, and the Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin went into cardiac arrest. And it was a point where it was for all 20 minutes, the Buffalo Bills training staff was trying to revive him, which luckily he did. He managed to wake up in the hospital later that night, but there was a sports commentator by the name of Skip Bayless who went on Twitter and just, said, I don't know how this is going to affect, the playoff hopes of the teams involved, and rightfully got backlashed for it, because, there's probably times where you should not be making comments about, that stuff, because I think it distracts from what is actually happening.
Especially when lives are on the line. But this whole thing, those types of posts, it reminds me of the Justin Timberlake thing that happened a few years ago, where he's how's this going to affect the tour when he got arrested?
The world tour. Very, very tough situation. Sucks for the guy with Tourette's and Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo for having to deal with that. And, big L on the BAFTA's part. A weird award show, oddly enough, just... it's funny how people consider it to be the award show that's a precursor to the, Oscars, when they awarded a guy that wasn't even nominated for the Best Actor Oscar this year. So,
yeah, and I never even heard of that film, but now I'm kind of interested to check it out. It seems very interesting. So, yeah, I guess this wasn't really the precursor people were hoping for. So now we still just got to anxiously wait until March 15th for the Oscar win.
Yep, for sure. I don't know. I feel like it's pretty much set in stone at this point on who's going to win. But, anything could happen,
Yeah.
But either way, still rough situation on the BAFTA's part and, do better. Definitely do better.
Please do better.
Yeah. And you know who else should do better? Because I told you last week, after watching this film, I had a huge axe to grind. And that is Emerald Fennell, who, talented filmmaker, very much so, but don't think I've ever walked out of a film at the end of the day feeling like I just continue to hate this film more and more, and that is Wuthering Heights, the newest out of many adaptations that have, graced a silver screen or a TV. Before the film, I've only watched the 1939 William Wyler version. And,
yeah, same.
Yeah,
in preparation.
I meant to watch the 2011 one, which I was seeing a lot of views on Letterboxd saying it's like the most faithful adaptation of the book, but which, does get me interested to watch it. And then immediately after the film, I was like, I'm going to read the book and see what, she got wrong. And it's like, I guess it sort of gave me an idea of like, what a lot of other filmmakers got wrong about the book initially. But regardless, for those who don't know, Wuthering Heights is the most recent adaptation of the Emily Bronte 1853 novel, and it stars Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie, directed by Emerald Fennell, who has been a relatively divisive filmmaker in the past couple years, which has been interesting. Promising Young Woman came out in the midst of COVID, and then she had Saltburn from 2023, I believe. But it's always seemed like
that was a few years back.
Yeah, so it's always seemed like this filmmaker is sort of on, relatively divisive. And I guess before I we get into thoughts, like what has your experience been with Emerald Fennell's work?
So she's only made 3 films, and I remember when Promising Young Woman came out, I watched it and I liked it, and I haven't seen it since, but I think actually as a first feature, it's pretty promising. She has a really interesting visual style. Like, she really loves pastel colors, and I think it did a decent job communicating what the themes and ideas it wanted to communicate. It might not be the best written script, but it was decent. And then I was actually kind of excited for Saltburn because with Promising Young Woman, it's like, okay, she has talent, and then she's bringing in Barry Keoghan and Jacob Elordi, who are 2 actors I really like. And when I read the synopsis, I was like, oh, this I like this idea. Let's see what she does with it. And then I walked away supremely disappointed because it was super shallow. One of the laziest and most shallowest forms of provocation in recent cinema, that people on TikTok were acting like it was the most disturbing and shocking film they'd ever seen. And then I'm sitting here thinking, like, there's movies like Antichrist and Old Boy that blow this movie out of the water in terms of disturbing content. So yeah, not a fan of Saltburn. So for that reason, when I went into Wuthering Heights, I was more just like, okay, this will make or break what I think about Emerald Fennell as a filmmaker. And I had an interesting experience with the film because I hadn't read the book, at least not until before seeing the film. The only experience I had with Wuthering Heights was, like you, the 1939 Wyler film, which, to summarize that, it's good. I like that movie. It's definitely a product of the Golden Age Hollywood studio system. So for that reason, the book was very much limited in terms of what it could show, which, fair, but it still was a really good production overall. So when I saw Wuthering Heights in theaters, the new one at least, I came away just like, well, that wasn't great. I was pretty indifferent to it. I know a lot of people online, they were treating it as if this was like the most heinous desecration of a literary classic they'd ever seen. But for me, not having read the book, I was more just like, I mean, it was not good, but it wasn't mad about anything. It just seemed like it was kind of lazily told. It wasn't very narratively interesting. I mean, it looked really pretty, but that was basically about it. But then in preparation for this episode, we were having conversations about like, oh, maybe we should read the book. So I, listened to the audiobook before doing this conversation, and I have to backtrack on a lot of my initial thoughts on the film because I think in a way it is a borderline desecration. That's not to say I outright despise it, because in interviews, Fennell has been very open about this is not an accurate adaptation, which is fine. And in a weird way, I kind of respect that, because she is not saying like, oh no, this is the definitive version of this artistic literary classic. Like, that's not her attitude. Her attitude is like, I want to do something new. But in the process, you could tell that she totally did not understand the intent of the book, the themes, the ideas, and likewise, a lot of the material was cut out. And if we live in an age where we're not confined to the Hays Code and the restrictions of the 30 studio system, what is necessarily limiting a director from actually diving into the entirety of the book? And the biggest issue I have with Wuthering Heights is that this film is that it acts like a romance, whereas the book is certainly not a romance. It is really a deconstruction of of classism, and also just how self-destructive obsession really is, which I guess Fennell does dive into, but it's framed within this forbidden romance. And overall, it just seemed like, okay, all she got away from the characters is that like they're just super, super down bad and they want to be in love, but they can't. And that's the driving force of the film, which is, in my opinion, a very, very shallow interpretation of what the story really dove into. And it's captivating. It's a captivating story with characters that are incredibly flawed, but also have so much depth to it. And none of that is really seen in this film. So I definitely don't like it. I'll say that, but it's not like one of the worst movies ever, that's for sure. But in terms of the adaptation, it really kind of fails at its intent. So
I enjoyed Promising Young Woman, even if it had some flaws. And, Emerald Fennell sort of seems like a very unique voice, and she does have a unique sense of style too. I think we were talking about this a little bit. Like, she really knows the purpose of Ma Soon and using all the components of like the camera, the lighting, the sound mix. It's like, she does realize how to use all that to create a pretty impactful image. I guess like going into this, my expectations were really, really low, although I do appreciate the level of effort that's sort of put into her craft. Sometimes I feel like she's intending to provoke people without any substance underneath. And I think that's how I felt about Saltburn at the end of the day, because, the story was just very hollow, although the premise was very promising. My expectations were really low for this, so I wasn't that excited, even with one of my favorite artists, doing the soundtrack for this film. But so, I went in, I think it was I was with the older crowd, oddly enough. It's like 60 plus year olds, which is very interesting. I'm not sure what your theater experience was, but I think I was with it
was a lot of young people.
A lot of young people. So I was in a very different demographic for this film. I saw it at 2:00 in the afternoon. But yeah, a lot of old people going out to see Wuthering Heights, which I guess it is it is a very classic novel. But after the film ended, it's like I just really started to hate it more and more with each passing second. Thing is, I wasn't realizing until I read the book after the film, Wuthering Heights is not necessarily a romance as much as Fennell tries to paint it as one. She initially, like what you stated before, it's a story about classism. It's a story about obsession, and how the obsessions can sort of drive away the relationships. Because initially, these are characters that are if they were in real life, like be really detestable people, and showing how that obsession for status and class really affects how people behave, and how it kills these relationships. What Emma Fennell did is like she took the aspect of the book and of the story for that matter, and even like the 1939 version, they realized this, is that the romance is really the weakest part of the whole story. Like, because initially, like, Heathcliff and Kathy never have sex in the story. I mean, yeah, they're having a relationship, but all that relationship is sort of sidetracked by when the love triangle comes into town with Edgar. And it's like, it sort of just like tries to narrow in on that dynamic, which, yeah, in some cases would be interesting, but I would give a shit if these characters had any sort of chemistry with one another. Even with like the 1939 film, it's like at least Meryl Oberon and Laurence Olivier demonstrated a lot of chemistry in the film, even if these characters sort of grown to like be very distant of one another and sort of having this diehard obsession of one another that really proves all these toxic traits, which is funny because Olivier and Oberon hated each other during the production of the 1939 film. I never felt that Jacob Elordi or Margot Robbie were actually in love one bit with each other. Like, I never didn't believe it for a second. And I know that's like the intent, but like there should have been some chemistry there to begin with. Even when their kids are just fighting, it's like nothing interesting going on in the story. And so it's narrowing in on the one aspect of the story that's barely even focused on in the book, and really just sort of kills the experience. And this was even before I read the book, like, because this chemistry just was so lacking. It's like, what makes this a love story?
The chemistry is not very good, which I find to be even more of the fault of Fennell. Because like, if you wanted to really tell a romance story, you want good chemistry from the two leads. Like, if that's not there, then I'm sorry, you didn't really do a good job then. So it's funny how she honed in on an aspect that really is not something you should be taking away from the novel. But even then, it's not like she told a good romance story independent of Wuthering Heights. And if you wanted to divert from the material this much, I think having the name of the original source, it implies a level of expectation that you don't necessarily have. But even I think if this was just entirely original without that name, I still would probably feel about the same. There are changes that are made to this film that are genuinely infuriating, but I think what's most disappointing is that the book is very engrossing. It's told from different perspectives, and you really sense the world and like how Bronte paints all these characters in a way where there's all this backstory, and like even just listening to the descriptions, you can paint a picture in your mind of like what these people look like and the scenarios that they go through. And but narratively here, it's cut together in a linear fashion that is just not super satisfying. Like, it just kind of jumps around all over the place, and I don't know, the escalation of events really makes you seem like, okay, what's the passage of time? Why did this occur? And I don't know, I just think as a film, it was not very engaging. The only thing that was really engaging me were the visuals, which shout out to cinematographer Linus Sandgren. He worked with Damien Chazelle, and he's going to shoot the upcoming Dune film. And he's a great cinematographer. The one thing to really praise about the film is that it is very, very pretty. Like, I love the way it captures the landscapes, and even with the use of color too. Like, there is this intentional attention paid to the production design. Like, there's some shots where it's snowing outside and it's obviously a set. Like, they don't even try to hide it, but it adds to the style and the charm. And it was also shot on VistaVision as well. This is part of the recent VistaVision revival, and it looks older than it really is, which is kind of, in a way, that contrast sort of works, where it's like, okay, you have you're presenting this as very royal and theatrical, but then you also got like BDSM like sub stuff in there where it's like that. I guess that contrast was supposed to like be a shock to the senses, but overall it's lazy provocation. And if Fennel wants to be a provocateur, that's fine, but there's even a way to make provocation in films like really interesting, like Lars von Trier, for example. That's a guy who's a complete provocateur and pretty divisive, sure, but at least he's creating something that is very unique, engaging, and also challenging. Wuthering Heights isn't challenging, and I think that's the issue.
Yeah, and it's like, initially you had a whole story to work with when adapting this, and I could understand like trying to go for your own interpretation. I think I was listening to the DGA podcast, Directors Guild of America, when Priscilla came out a few years ago. And Sofia Coppola, probably one of my personal favorite filmmakers out there, she was talking about how, she wanted to create her own story, but still respect the original source material in some way. It's challenging for a filmmaker to do that when adapting a source material, especially something as popular as Wuthering Heights. For most cases, it's like, sure, for some filmmakers, it could be a walk in the park, but, I could see what Fennell was trying to do is like, trying to create her own interpretation. But as I'm like reading the book and trying to figure out what she was seeing in this novel that made her want to interpret it this way, it's like, I could barely find it. Edgar Linton in this story is just practically non-existent. Like, he's there, but it's like you can barely sense a love triangle at all. Like, he's just sort of in the background until, like, you know what? You should stay away from that Heathcliff guy. Like, it's not...
like, where's the tension?
Yeah, there's like no tension at all. So it's like, she strips away so much of the source material to focus on the romance that, was not, it was present, but what I mean is like more or less that its focus was more on the classism aspect, which, even with the flaws of the 1939 adaptation, that's the one thing William Wyler got right, was focusing on that social status. And here it's using it, but it's trying to like, use it in a way that isn't interesting. It's like, it's just all window dressing. I mean, Linus Angren is doing such a great job with the cinematography, and the production design is really gorgeous. I mean, just like some of this stuff looks really great. And I'm really impressed with like how good this film looks, but like, where is the story and character that made the book interesting?
No, it's funny that you mentioned Sofia Coppola, because when I was watching Wuthering Heights, the one film I was thinking about was Marie Antoinette, which, have you seen by any chance?
Yeah, I have, but it's been a bit. I know it's like one of those films I want to watch.
Yeah, with Kirsten Dunst, and I really like that movie. And that's another film that is telling a historical story, but framing it with a very anachronistic modern lens. Like, there's straight up a shot where there's Converse on the ground. And it's another film where some people were really pissed off about the inaccuracies and all that. But what Coppola did with that story is that, yeah, she's telling a period piece and she's having like 90s pop hits play, but it's all feeding into this youthful spirit, capturing that tone of the Marie Antoinette figure. And that worked. It leaned into the rebelliousness of that character, and overall, independent, removing that out of the equation, she just made a better film overall. Whereas with Wuthering Heights, you sense that she wants to make a statement. You sense that she wants to spark conversation and particularly discourse, but she's not doing it in ways where it's like it necessitates that conversation. Because I think about all like the quote unquote shocking scenes of like, oh, look at, it's meant to be like an erotic drama, or the first shot of the film is a guy being hanged by a noose, and then he's like moaning. It sounds like there's like sex happening, but no, he's being choked, and he's got a huge erection. Like, that sets the tone of the film, and the provocation is on the level of like a middle schooler. It's just like, haha, sex. Like that's what it screams the whole time. And that's the problem I had with Saltburn also, is that's like, even when you're trying to be provocative, it's like it's super immature. It's not engaging really. And if there's one thing that the novel really encompassed that this film I think tried to do but took it in a different direction was the fact that it was really about generational trauma. Like all the characters are, as you said, horrible people, but they come from an experience that trauma is almost a cycle in a way, and that shapes them into who they are, especially with the Heathcliff character, where he's straight up just an abuser. He's like gruff, and he's a pretty intimidating, scary character. Like it's someone you don't want to aspire to be. But in this film, Fennell sort of took that angle, but in the fact that's like, okay, what his idea of sex and love is warped because the only encounters he's had with sex was from a very, let's say, goes down the lines of like a BDSM relationship. That's what he saw, and that's what I guess he wants to enact in terms of what he considers love and romance. Why is that? That's what's baffling about the film, is that it's just like, why was that what you took away from the text? Why did you feel the need to go down this route in terms of expressing trauma and like forbidden love? It's just odd. It's an odd decision.
Yeah, and then it doesn't really help that, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi are great actors. I mean, especially Margot Robbie in recent years. I mean, I, Tanya is a great performance, and I love her in Wolf of Wall Street and Barbie, of course. And, Jacob Elordi's really showing his true acting chops. I mean, dude's now a Oscar-nominated actor. And, he's been doing great things even before that with Euphoria. But their performances here are just so, not good. Like, they're not good performances. I mean, I wouldn't say they're the worst performances. I mean, I wouldn't say they're like career derailing performances like John Travolta in Battlefield Earth. But it's like a case where like Margot Robbie, like her acting seems a little too cartoonish. And part of it's like because, she's a little, initially she's trying to be an older woman playing the role of somebody who's supposed to be in her 20s. And don't get me wrong, like, she looks pretty good for the age she is, but it's like it comes off really like misguided and misdirected. And then Jacob Elordi in this film is just like a little bit too understated, I think, because I never like, there's never been a point of like Jacob Elordi's like character in this film, at least his version of Heathcliff, where I never sense that much of a dark side in this character, which I know is like the purpose with all the other interpretations, even like the William Lyra interpretation does sort of give us that idea of like, yeah, this guy is probably not the best person to be around. But half the time it's just like he just acts more like a disgruntled farmer who wants to get his work done compared to somebody that really wants to like, receive all this power in some sense. And so it really doesn't work that both of these like actors are giving in completely different levels of performances that don't really fit these characters. And it just really doesn't work. And, you could say the same for most of the other actors outside of Hong Chow, who is probably the only actor who actually sort of does fit the role pretty well of Nellie Dean pretty well. But
yeah, she was good casting.
Yeah, but it's like they both feel rather miscasted here, and and that part of the reason like the writing's not good. Like there's such a lack of chemistry between either of these two that no matter how good your performance is, it's like it sort of is going to derail it. But at the end of the day, it's like I feel like they were really misdirected. And don't get me wrong, they got some moments that can like really show their chops, but at other points it just comes off really misdirected.
I agree. The chemistry between Elordi and Robbie is not good, but I don't think they were necessarily that bad, to tell you the truth. Like I don't think they were necessarily well cast either, but you could tell that they are definitely trying with the material, and I think they are at the caliber of performer where they are good enough to sell the material. But it's more just the characterization that I really had a problem with after reading the book. it really reduces every character down to just very one note and like kind of flippant almost. Like the Kathy character, you just kind of sense that she like, yeah, she grows up in a world of like privilege essentially, but it's almost like too cartoony. And then with Heathcliff, like the thing about Heathcliff that makes him so intimidating in the novel, and also what the tragedy of the story is the fact that he himself was a victim of that abuse and trauma. He's enacting that onto other people just because that's how he was raised. In a way, that's kind of like what he knows, because that came from his brother, right? In the book. Mm-hmm. And the brother is not in the movie. What's it? Hindley.
Yeah.
Hindley's not in this adaptation. So when he starts out, like, yeah, he comes from a poorer background, but oh no, he's a pretty average, normal kid. So there's nothing really distressing about him. And as you say, like he gets his work done. He gets like kind of irritated at times, but really how he becomes warped is by him witnessing the sexual acts of, I don't even remember the characters' names for some reason, but like, engaging.
It's like the maid, and I forgot the name of like it's like apparently this guy had like a pretty big role in the book. He was sort of like the farmhand or whatever.
Yeah, they're like other farmhands or like servants basically engaging in the BDSM stuff. And that's why I guess what Heathcliff thinks about love and supposedly what he wants to do to Kathy. But then it just seems like, okay, you just reduced this guy to basically a tragic figure into essentially just a pervert. Like, it's not an interesting character when you just reduce it down that much. And we also got to talk about, because I think if there's one change that genuinely did infuriate me was how this film handled Isabella.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
compared to the novel. And honestly, like when I first saw the film, I still liked the character because like, okay, she's definitely more innocent. She's more awkward, but then she does desire this love. So I saw as like, okay, she wants to be loved by all means, like regardless of like what that love entails. To which, spoilers, I guess. I don't know if there's really I need to like spoil this.
Yes, but, spoilers from here on out, I guess. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the relationship that she engages with Heathcliff, I guess, to sort of like fulfill Heathcliff's desires is to engage in a BDSM relationship with Isabella in the film, which totally disregards in the book how she is basically essentially trapped by Heathcliff and is more of for her, a sense of survival, just trying to endure and live with this like vengeful, just like horrible person. Whereas in this film, she just becomes the sub, basically, which I did read somewhere where they said like, okay, this provides the character with more agency, but at the same time, that agency is being placed on literally being like the desire of the male character. Like you took one step forward and like 50 steps back with that reinterpretation. It's really, really not cool, honestly. And it's a shame because I think she is a very, you just feel bad for her in the book. Like it really hammers that home. And then in here, like, I don't know, it's weird. Like,
yeah, it's,
I know, like as I'm like getting this out, it's like, I agree with you. It's like more and more frustrating to think about.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, because initially what it's supposed to be is like Isabella sort of she falls in love with Heathcliff in the story, in the book. And, you know, this is the same, I mean, obviously in all the adaptations. But I think the difference is that, you know, it seems like comes off a little more like submissive in this one than she does in the other ones. And the thing about like Isabella, it's like, you know, it's sort of, and, you know, the Heathcliff character in general is just a very cold and heartless person throughout the majority of like the novel. Like even in the beginning when, you know, which, you know, they did take away the framing device with Mr. Woodward, I believe is his name. Like they take away the framing device with that character. And no, like even the 1939 film does take away a little bit of that character's backstory, but even then they still like, you know, keep the name, still keep the framing device. But the thing that makes like, you know, the opening of the original book so impactful is in some way, like when you think more on it as you look back after seeing this film, is that you kind of realize how Isabella sort of becomes more just as cold and heartless as Heathcliff was. Like, she seems like somebody that is stuck in such a really deranged relationship at the end of the day, and sort of being put into a role that she shouldn't. A lot of like women from like back in the day were put into, like really cold and heartless relationships that don't have anything to them. In the original film, it's like, like the 1939 film, at least, it's like I guess it was supposed to be like the daughter character, but in the book, it's just the Isabella character, I believe. But regardless, it's like you're seeing how cold and heartless this relationship is. But here it's just like you don't get the gist of that at all. You just kind of see her as just being a submissive pet, which I guess is the intent. Because, obviously they had that weird scene of like her wearing the dog collar and, Heathcliff treating her like a pet. And it's just like what we talked about with the opening scene. It's just provocative for the sake of being provocative. It's not doing anything or saying anything at all. And so it's like, this is the edginess, I guess, Emerald Fennell was like looking for. But it's like a case where, it really takes away that character study at the end of the day, because, all these characters sort of go through these type of relationships and are, in like all cases are really unhappy with each other at the end of the day. But it tries to change it and it just doesn't work. It's like it wants to be provocative for the sake of being provocative, but it's really sacrificing the best parts of these characters.
In that regard, I guess Heathcliff also engaging in that type of relationship is the fact that he probably fell on the more submissive end. It's just like, okay, Kathy considers Heathcliff a pet, like when they're kids. So I guess maybe he's sort of like getting that out on Isabel, which in a way, that core idea is present in the original novel without the provocation. And it does reduce all the characters down to just being like, okay, either their trauma is more so in line with, I guess, sex and kink that really isn't present in the original novel. And in doing so, like the core issue of the film is that it really strips away the depth of not only the themes, but especially the characters. Like, we've barely mentioned Kathy, who even in the novel, I think the supporting characters in general tend to be a little more interesting. But even then, she still has a lot going on. And then in the film, she's just kind of like, I don't know. There's not really a lot to her in the film overall. And especially because by the end, she's just bedridden for like a solid 30 minutes. It's like the Sleeping Beauty problem, where she's like, the character of Aurora is like not very compelling. And then for the remaining half, she's just asleep the whole time. So yeah, it's a shame because there is great material here. And I really think because we live in this age where people love period dramas, people love Pride and Prejudice, people even like Bridgerton, which is pretty subversive in that regard. This could have been really, really special, I think, but not in this direction. And I'm sorry, probably not from Emerald Fennell at this rate. She's just pulling a lot of the same tricks now. Like, it's just predictable and frustrating. So
yeah, and it's, back to the Kathy character, because, I think there are elements that, sort of do make her a pretty, like, well-rounded character in the other pieces of source material we talked about. Because, initially this is somebody, like, that has an aspiration to be part of the upper class or, achieve such a status, such as marrying somebody like Edgar Linton. And, you kind of see how it, like, tortures her a little bit. And I guess they're, like, visually, like, you can see some things like how it is sort of like an isolating lifestyle, but it's more of a case where it's like I never really sense the passion for Heathcliff in this adaptation as I did in the 1939 adaptation or even the book. And because, you kind of see her in the 1939 film, like doing pretty like, undetestable things as she does in the film, but in this version of the film, but you kind of still sense that, like, yeah, there was a sympathy for that relationship to begin with. And here it's just like, I don't know, it's like she just doesn't really leave that much of an impact from
She
that.
doesn't really do much as a protagonist.
Nah, she doesn't. And, you know, it's like, because like half the time, like after the father character, you know, kicks the bucket, which, you know, already an accuracy based on the novel, but, you know, I can understand why, you know, they made the changes, because initially the father character dies early on, and, you know, they have the brother character sort of as the character that dies in the book. Like, I don't really like that change. I feel like it doesn't make much sense on why the father adopted Heathcliff if he was going to beat him anyway. But regardless, the father character croaks. And then from that point on, after the father character dies, it's like a straight 20 minutes of vanilla sex scenes between these two characters. And it's just like, there's never a single point where I've ever felt like there's been agency with the Kathy character at all. I mean, they tried to give her agency, like, you know, she tried to tell like Isabella not to go see with her, try to be a really powerful and intimidating woman, but there's just never been a point where I've ever felt like she had that much agency, because it still feels like she's just, you know, getting dragged away either by the status she wants or by the fact that she wants to have sex with Heathcliff. It's like, it doesn't make sense, and it just kind of like on a turn of a dime, they immediately just go into vanilla sex scenes. It doesn't work.
I understand Fennel's reasoning for combining, I guess, the brother and the father character into one. But in doing so, exactly what you said, it just raises the question, like, okay, if the father adopts Heathcliff, I guess it's more for Kathy's sake, but if he was just going to beat him anyway, like, why would he even care at that point? Why would he go through the effort of like bringing him in and making part of the family if you're just going to abuse him? I don't know. It's just weird character decisions when you condense it or merge characters like that together. We didn't talk about the Charlie XCX songs in here too, which, I'll be honest, I usually really hate when there's like super contemporary music within a period piece. Like, that's why I hate like Baz Luhrmann films, for example. But in here, I honestly didn't really mind that, because this movie changes so much anyway. It's like, okay, you might as well like not even bother with period accurate music. And, you know, kind of like what we said with The Moment, Charlie brings her A game. She wrote good songs. I think Chains of Love is a good song. And in a way, it highlights how Fennel is a far better visual director than she is like a screenwriter. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the scenes with the original songs are essentially music videos. And in that regard, they do work well. It's good visual storytelling, honestly. And unfortunately, they're a bit few and far between, but it does change it up a bit, because there's so many points in the movie when the music doesn't play, it's just really dull or just upsetting and annoying. But then like when the music comes, like, oh, it's like breathing some like new life into this. So I don't mind that change or that artistic decision in here, because I know people were kind of making fun of that at first.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind it either. I mean, you know, I actually did listen to the companion album that Charlie did release with this film, and not her best work, but not her worst. I mean, House, I think, is a great opener, especially bringing in John Cale as a featured artist on that song. Great choice. And, you know, I like Chains of Love, too. But I felt like the whole, like, soundtrack of the film was really underutilized at the end of the day. Like, it didn't. And, you know, when it is used, it's, you know, it's good, but it kind of feels like it's trying to, you know, like Linus Sandgren and cinematography, do a lot of the heavy lifting. So it feels like the music at some points is trying to compensate for the emotions that aren't really there. And, you know, it's just upsetting, because, you know, this is very like well-written music, and, you know, Charlie, like, you know, certainly does work. Her style does work with these scenes, but it's like it feels really underutilized, and, you know, and it kind of gives like some tonal inconsistencies for what we're supposed to be feeling at this point in the film, and it just doesn't really work. as much as I wanted to. Although like I do like it. It does really well, but it feels like it's just like it's like Fennell's trying to rely heavily on the technical aspects without realizing that the script is just not good.
But I do appreciate that, because if the movie didn't necessarily have that score or was like poorly shot, this would have been like way worse. In a way, this is a style over substance movie where I still think about some of those visuals. There's some shots and use of color that are honestly gorgeous. And if it weren't for that, like I really would have hated the film overall. Like I don't think there would have been almost anything of value, but it's really that. And as much as this is frustrating, it's like, okay, this is clearly what Fennell wanted to make. She clearly had no intentions of making this an accurate adaptation, but it's more, I just question what prompted you to make these decisions. Like after reading Wuthering Heights, like what did you take away from the novel to inform your decision to do this? I think that's the bigger question at hand, because what I read was certainly not what I got out of this film, and that's not what I would have taken away from it. And it's just more of a curiosity in that regard. So.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's supposed to be gothic too. Like I never felt at any point in this story that there was really much of a gothic feel for it. Although, like, yeah, like the cinematography is great, but I never felt like the gothic nature of the novel really shined through here. And yeah, I can understand what Fennell's trying to do with this story, but it's just like I wish there were much more of the gothic atmosphere that was present in a lot of the other adaptations. Like even the 1939 film had some gothic parts to it, like especially like in the opening scene where you hear the ghost of Kathy calling Heathcliff. Like, yeah, that's like disturbing. That's very mystical, and you don't get that here. And don't get me wrong, and understand trying to ground it in realism, but like I wanted much more of like the heaviness of the story, and it's just a complete mismanagement of atmosphere here.
Yeah, the only sense of gothic storytelling or gothic visuals that I saw, there's some parts when like the fog rolls in. Like I think actually the reveal when Kathy goes back to Wuthering Heights, and then that's when she first like reunites with Heathcliff. Like that, I thought was like, okay, I see that. And even some of the early shots in Wuthering Heights, like there's some. I remember there was one shot where like the dad is sitting in a chair and the camera's kind of looking upwards, and it's a very dark room too. I'm like, oh, that kind of looks a bit gothic, but I agree, it's not as well represented here. But at least it wasn't plain or boring to look at. Like I do like the contrast that Fennell does instead, where it's like, okay, Wuthering Heights is like the most drab, dark, wet, boring place, but then when you go to the Linton Estate, it's so bright and lively, and it's like that works. And even some of the shots like the cliffs like look really, really nice too. And there's like one match shot where Heathcliff is waiting on the cliff and it cuts to like nighttime and he's in the same position. Like it's not groundbreaking. It's not a groundbreaking edit, but it works. It's effective. So
yeah. I mean, it's like the film visually does work in some way, but when the story is like not showing any muscle at all, it really kind of makes it feel like a waste of the talents of these filmmakers. I wasn't like thinking too much about Linus Sandgren for Wuthering Heights, although I loved La La Land, but when I heard Greg Fraser was not going to be doing Dune 3 and that he was going to be replaced by Linus Sandgren, I was like, okay, not a bad choice, but I like Fraser's cinematography better and has much more of a size to it. But I think this is probably like him showing like, oh yeah, I could do something on the scale of Dune, because this is great cinematography. Shout out to Patrick. He made a Letterboxd review like saying like Linus Sandgren cuts the lead down to 42, but love that. Yeah. The technicals are great. Like the technicals are probably the solid part of this film. It's just like there's just no muscle under the script, and it just starts to feel like eye candy after a while.
Yeah, it's a lot of icing, but there's like no cake.
And I think it just like sort of just limps to its ending. Like I think it's like after all the vanilla sex scenes happen and the quote unquote yearning part of the story of like Kathy like being bedridden throughout the rest of the film. It's like the film really starts to go downhill. And it just doesn't hit its ending as much as it wants to. Like I never felt the emotion when Kathy like passes away and like Heathcliff tries to go back to her. It's like I never felt that emotion at all.
Yeah, the last third really, really stumbles. Like it just doesn't. It kind of like crawls to it because also we didn't mention, but where this film ends is basically the halfway point of the book. There's an entire like second act basically to the book that isn't present here. So I guess maybe that's where Fennel stopped reading, and she's thought like, oh, that's good enough. So
and it's weird too, like because as limited as the 1939 film was. It starts and ends at the same spot outside of like, the framing device not being there. Because, it does end with, Kathy kicking the bucket and, it sort of does flash forward back to like, the Mr. Lockwood character. So you can focus on that part of the story if you had the script working at that point. But it's just like the fact that there is such a lack of chemistry and such a lack of sympathy for these two characters, it's just like the emotional moments, even as well shot as these are, like I really like the tight shot of like Heathcliff walking up the stairs. Like that's a good shot. But it's just like at that point, it's like, the film is trying to grasp for our emotions that, just aren't there. It just really comes off super hollow because we know there's a version that works because it was the 1939, so that film was very limited by like the Hays Code and the fact that the book is very dense. So I don't know how this film stumbled where that film didn't.
Well, it's because that film didn't have BDSM and kink, so they actually had to somewhat follow the text, which Fennel didn't.
Yeah.
So
yeah. What does William Wyler know? Huh?
At least with that one, like the 30s film, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. You can adapt the first half well. And I think that's also one where it's like limitations ultimately became strengths because we had to adapt it in a way where we can't really get into we can't be as explicit with how it deals with trauma and abuse, but we can make up for that in the atmosphere and also really just treating the characters with respect. And here we live in a time where we don't have those restrictions when it comes to censorship. You could have actively made this a more accurate adaptation, even if you wanted to dive into this weird kink BDSM angle to Wuthering Heights. Like, sure, fine. If you want to do that, whatever. But you could have gone and like finished the rest of the novel. It could have been done. Maybe if you did a miniseries of this, but I don't want Emerald Fennell to direct a miniseries of Wuthering Heights, quite honestly. But in the modern day, you could tell this whole story. I don't think it's necessarily going to turn people away from the novel, but it's going to leave people with the wrong impression of the novel, which is not good because it's a well-known classic. So
it's never meant to be as much of a romance as it was advertised to be. Like even the 1939 film like fell in that trap of like being a quote unquote romance film. But even then, like by the limitations of that time period, it's like, they were still able to like sort of create the anti-romance angle that the author of the original book intended. And it's like, I actually like the second half of the book. Still spoilers for the novel, but still read it. Obviously, literary classic. I mean, my sister's applauded me that I actually went out and read a book. But, the second half of the novel, it is very depressing. Like, you kind of see where Heathcliff ends up and, the offspring sort of end up as well, and seeing how the generational trauma really sets in for a lot of these characters. And it's a really deep and provocative third act in the book. Like, I was really impressed, like, how emotionally satisfying it was for the ending of that novel, and just really seeing how where Heathcliff ends up and just becomes a really depressing, like, person to be around. Like, comes off really intimidating and, cold-hearted, but it's like, you kind of realize, like, man, this guy really had a a lot of emotion underneath that like really rough exterior, who meets like a really not so good end, but kind of having a lot of hopefulness for like the children at the end as well. And it's like, yeah, that part really could have been adapted into a modern reinterpretation of this book. The studio system here in the States have tried to create this into a traditional romance, and in cases it really isn't. Like, the generational trauma
No, it's not.
the obsession angles, like, really deter this from being a true romance. Like, this isn't Singing in the Rain. This isn't Before Sunrise. This isn't a traditional romance. It's a gothic anti-romance. Like, that's the purpose of this book. It was really ahead of its time for 1853. It's insane that this source material was like really ahead of its time. Like, it's insane how this like managed to do something that captivating over 200 years ago. That is really impressive.
Yeah, and it's a shame that this is the only novel that Bronte wrote too. I know she passed away shortly. Was it shortly after she wrote the book?
I believe so. And I know
I don't know much about Emily Bronte, but
yeah.
It was like a year after. So
I got to do some more digging into the history of Emily Bronte. So it would be very interesting to see like what her thought process was, but yeah, it's sad. Like, this is probably like the biggest notable novel she has, and I think this source material deserves like really good adaptations, and obviously there's like a lot of them. Only ones we watched are 39 and this one. I know I got to see the 2011 one. I know it's on Criterion.
Yeah, I want to see that one.
All right. Any thoughts on quotations Wuthering Heights?
It's not good. Based on the conversation that I've been having, it sounds like I actively despise it, and I really don't, because most of it is just, I guess, recency bias anger because I just finished reading the novel. But it's really just more, it's a disappointment because the source material is so strong and you turned it into something that's so milquetoast and one-dimensional and flat, and it's really a shame because the potential is there. Yeah, as I alluded to earlier, like, thank God the film looks nice, because if it weren't for that, this would be like way, way worse. I don't know if I will necessarily watch more Emerald Fennell films after this, tell you the truth. It sort of vindicated my thoughts of like, okay, she really is just doing the same thing over and over again with the provocation and not much else. So yeah, 4 out of 10. Not very good, especially if you read the novel. I don't recommend watching this, but yeah, skip.
I mean, I think I made my thoughts pretty clear from the start. I really did not like this film. I mean, even taking the novel out of it and trying to see it as its own thing, it just doesn't work. I mean, yeah, it looks great. Linus Sandgren is the true MVP of this film. And yeah, I mean, the production design's great. The costumes are great. And the music, when it's used, is, well written, even though I wish like it could have been utilized a little better or even just a little bit more. But the lack of chemistry between our leads and provocation of these scenes just doesn't work at all. And, even as an adaptation of a novel, it really doesn't work. I mean, it just tries to strip away the parts of the story that made it impactful to begin with and just like reduce it just to the weakest part of the narrative. Like, and yeah, sure, you can make a romance of this. You can try to include like BDSM style stuff, whatever, but at the end of the day, you got to be entertaining, and this was just a bore to get through. And the more I think about it, the more I hate it. And yeah, to me, it's definitely like a 3 out of 10. I think I maybe go lower, but I don't know. I think 3 out of 10 is probably where I put this. But who knows? I mean, who knows? "Quote unquote Wuthering Heights." I really love how they just put that into quotations. But hopefully, I mean, maybe it can get a cult following, like midnight screening, but I don't know. I can't really see much.
I think this will develop a cult following as like an alternative to sort of the conventions of period dramas. I can see that, in all honesty. Or maybe even if people like the book, they accept right at the fact, like, okay, just ignore the fact that this is an adaptation and it's just someone's like deranged reinterpretation of it. Like, you could get I could see why someone would get some ironic humor out of that, but not from me.
No.
Not from me.
No, definitely not from me. I mean, well, who knows? I mean, it's probably for sure good enough. I mean, I know she already has a pretty dedicated following. Not like a crazy dedicated following, because it's all on TikTok or whatever, and you know, people just make TikTok edits of like you know, the stuff from her films. But I know I made this comparison many times, but it's like, you know, I kind of compare her a lot to Greta Gerwig in a sense, where they both sort of explore the same sort of themes and try to use those themes in ways that are provocative. But you know, Greta Gerwig is like Matt Stone and Trey Parker, while Fennell is more like McFarlane, where, you know, it's provocative without any substance underneath or anything to say. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping she can, I mean, she is talented for sure, but and so I hope that, you know, she can maybe create something like Promising Young Woman, even as flawed as that film was. I do think, like, you know, there is I think that's where the provocative nature works, but I haven't seen it in these last two films. But well, that is it of quote unquote Wuthering Heights. I still laugh at the fact that it's all quotations. And now we're going to go to our neighbors to the north. Although we did beat these guys in USA Olympic hockey yesterday.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. What the fuck is a kilometer, guys? Apologies to all my Canadian friends. Sports is sports, you know. I actually could not watch the game while I was driving, but still. But yeah, we're going to go up to our neighbors to the north and talk about Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie. A film that was heavily promoted by one of our good Iowa colleagues and friends, Grace McCabe, who actually like flew out to TIFF back in September, met Matt Johnson. And, you know, big promoter of this film. Like, she's done doing incredible things. I'm very happy where she's at. But yeah, Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie, created by Matt Johnson and Jay McCarroll, based off of the web series from the late 2000s. And then it had a sequel series on TV for a short period of time. And yeah, I guess we'll start. I mean, have you had any experience with Nirvana, the band, the show at all?
I have not, but I've been aware of it for a while, mostly because of YMS. So that was my introduction to Matt Johnson. And I wanted to watch the show in preparation for this, but you can't find it anywhere because recently Neon acquired the rights for everything. So the rumor is that they're going to do a big release of all the material, and they are planning to do season 3. Or no, season 3 is already filmed for Nirvana, the band, the show, and they're going to release it sometime. But
it's on Internet Archive.
Aside from that, I actually heard it got taken down because of Neon. So that's why I couldn't prep for this. So my only experience with Matt Johnson prior to this was the 2023 film BlackBerry, which is a really great film. It's a really great biopic story about the rise of the BlackBerry phone. And I still have to see his earlier work, The Dirties and Operation Avalanche. But because of me just consuming YouTube content, I've been aware of this film for a while, and I've been very, very curious about it, even though I have not seen the show. But I'm very much aware of Matt Johnson's comedic style and the way that he produces films. He very much produces it with this in the style of like cinema verite and blending fiction and reality. So Nirvana, the band, the show, in summary, is basically about two guys just trying to book a show at a club called the Rivoli in Toronto, and from there chaos ensues. But what makes it interesting and unique is the fact that in a similar style to Borat and Jackass, they use like a lot of hidden camera stuff where they interact with real people, and that inform the direction of the stories that they're telling. So it's this ultimate blending of fiction and reality. It's a mockumentary and a documentary at the same time. It's really, really interesting. And so that in that regard, doing a film seems like the next logical step, but also we've had similar films that have done the mockumentary sort of hidden camera style before. But what Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie does is play into that with time travel. And what we get out of it is a very, very funny and very entertaining film. I loved it. I thought this film was excellent from start to end. It is wildly funny, but also I really love just the effort and heart that was put into this film. Like, you sense it in every way, shape, and form, how the filmmaking is being used in manners that make sense. It's very much aware of the time travel tropes, and it's really doing a lot of, this might not have like the budget of, let's say, like an Oppenheimer or an Inception level film, but it uses the techniques and plays into it in ways that are very creative and almost daring in a way. Like, the scenarios that come out of this are just outrageously creative, but also really impressive. Like, there's some parts of the film where I was thinking, how did they pull that off? Like, legally, how did they pull that off? Like, it's really, really cool. So I thought this was just awesome, and I'm so glad that it's getting hyped up on the internet. More and more people are seeing it, and we're doing the same too. So we're part of that conversation.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I watched a little bit of the episodes on Internet Archive. I really hope they're still there. I haven't gotten to look, but it's like, it is a very funny show. It's sort of Office-like, but a little bit different. It's just sort of, like you said, it uses the approach that, they use in Borat and Jackass, and sort of had these little hidden camera tricks, but they pull off these really astounding stunts that, just makes you like, rub your eyes just to think it's not real, but it's real. It's like they really put in so much work, but also so much passion into what they do. And yeah, it's a very simple concept. They're just trying to perform at the Rivoli, which, I kind of like how there's a little bit of a humorous question where it's like, why couldn't they just approach the owner of the Rivoli just to,
Why can't they just like call them?
Yeah,
like any normal
save their
band?
time. But, it's never a question. But, hey, if they did, it would be such a boring show. Like, it probably wouldn't even last for like an episode. But yeah, so I was pretty excited for the movie, and I saw this at like 10 a.m. So Matthew knows this, but I did a double feature, and I think I should have done the reverse, where I should have saw this after Wuthering Heights, because I was in such a bad mood after that movie. But I saw this at 10 a.m. It's like probably a crowd of like 10 people, and everybody was just losing their minds. This is hilarious, like from front to back. I mean, just the level of craftsmanship they used on such a small budget is amazing. And just the fact that every twist and turn in the story is hilarious. It's really awesome that this film is getting the promotion that it is. I mean, I'm happy that YMS is, really promoting the hell out of this film. I mean, he's been giving, like, whenever he talks about it in, like, his video reviews or on Twitter, it's like he's doing everything to get this film the attention it deserves, because it does deserve the attention. It's awesome. I mean, it's sort of reminds me of, like I said, reminds me a lot of The Office. It reminds me a lot of the Lonely Island stuff. It's really insane just how this film was made and the stunts they pulled off, and just how a lot of the reactions and the people that they come across are genuine reactions. Nothing feels fake or cheap. It's just downright hilarious.
Yeah, in a way, this is the ingenuity of this film is reminiscent of Hundreds of Beavers from a few years ago. Like, I felt a similar joy watching this film as I did with Hundreds of Beavers, and the fact that it's the simplicity plays into the strengths, but you also sense that these are guys that love pop culture. They love films. This whole film is basically, I don't even want to say a parody. It's a borderline remake of Back to the Future, even down to the score, which comes like dangerously close to copyright infringement in terms of fair use. Like, it literally just sounds like they took out some of the notes in Silvestri's Back to the Future score, and that's the Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie score. It's like, it's awesome. It's so funny, but because of the familiarity with tropes and stories, Johnson and McCarroll are able to subvert those expectations and play into like all the questions of like, oh, if we're going back in time, like you can't touch a single thing or else that might change the direction of like the present day, or sort of like, oh, well, if we go back to the present and it's like totally changed, then we got to go back to the past to change the future, sort of like playing to the Back to the Future 2 storyline. Like, it's just really, really joyful and fun. Like, you sense that creativity all throughout. And it even starts with like, what an insane stunt right off the bat, where it starts, from what I'm aware, like every episode of Nirvana, the band, the show is basically like, oh, we want to get the show at the Rivoli. Let's do an outrageous plan and then just go. Like, that's the episode. It kind of starts off with that, where they decide, okay, we're going to go to the top of the CN Tower, jump off, like parachute into the baseball stadium, telling people to go to the Rivoli. Yeah, and like as I was watching, it's like, okay, there you can tell when they're trying to go through the metal detectors, like that's a real security guard. When they're up on the tower, like those are real people. And I just remember thinking like, is this real? Did they really do this? Like, it's actually phenomenal how they managed to pull it off. And God, like this is not a big special effects extravaganza, but there are some digital tricks and they are quite convincing too in some ways. Like, we'll probably get more towards in the last third, but there's some stuff that they managed to pull off on a small budget where it's like probably better than like $250 million blockbusters nowadays, which is really sad in hindsight. But yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in this film.
Oh yeah, and it's like, and I think it's like just how they just really sell like this whole concept, because in ways like, yeah, it does sort of utilize like the pieces that, like I said, have been utilized in other forms of, you know, comedies in recent years, because, you know, everybody's been now doing this documentary approach to everything now. But just the way they sort of sell like the fact that, you know, oh, they're back in 2008 it's insane, like the level of craftsmanship. Like, I sort of was laughing at the part in the film where, you know, Jay McCarroll's walking out of the RV, and then he's like noticing all the advertisements for like the Dark Knight and the iPod. It's like that, and then they walk into the theater and they're playing The Hangover. It's like, it's hilarious on how they do that. And it seemed like a point where like they go back to the old camcorders, which is really funny too. And I also like the fact that they still have like their camera person with them throughout the entire journey. It's hilarious, like how they just sell this concept and sell like, okay, we're back in 2008, or, you know, we're in a alternative version of 2025, and it's just like, it's gold. And I think part of it's just because the performances from both McCarroll and Johnson are really fun and inventive, and, you know, they definitely both have their dynamic with one another, where, you know, Matt is much more of like, you know, the eccentric idealist, while Jay is just sort of like the guy who's just sort of going along with his plan, but, you know, instead of questioning his place in this relationship. And I just love how the steps it's taken just to really, how the story is like, along with being comedic, is really testing their relationship in some way, but testing it in a way that actually feels genuine. I mean, they use some familiar tropes, but it all feels in service of the story and not just like there just to follow cliches. It works so well.
Yeah, nothing about it feels like farted out just for, oh, the script told us to do it. We reached that point in the script where they need to argue and stuff. Like, no, it builds up to naturally. And I guess in a way, like this is, I've never seen the show, but that doesn't matter because it works as a standalone project. But I think within the context of the show, it does sort of play into the idea of like, okay, this escalation building to this boiling point is a logical and reasonable, for Jay at least, to sort of do his own thing. But even then, like without the context of the show, you could tell just based on the personalities, like Matt is the type of guy who would just constantly come up with crazier and crazier schemes. And you could tell it's just been taking a toll on Jay. And so it works well in that regard. Like it makes sense. And that's why I also like about this film too, is that one of the biggest problems with comedies, especially like they might be hilarious, but they're very much falling into cliches, but not really doing necessarily anything to subvert them. Like one of my favorite recent comedies is Bottoms from Emma Seligman, which I still love that movie, but there are some tropes where it's like, okay, why are we doing this now? Like we're in the 2020s and we're still doing these tropes, but I don't care because the movie's so funny. This is one where it's aware of that, and it's sort of, it does something so clever with those cliches and tropes that it makes it really more creative in that regard. And like the jokes are all just really great. There's I love how some of the reveals, like when they're watching The Hangover, like Matt, is it Matt or I can't remember if it's Matt or Jay. It might have been Matt actually. His realization that they're in 2008 is a scene in The Hangover where they drop a word where you probably shouldn't be saying, like in today's context, and like that's how he realizes he's in the past. Like that's brilliant. That's a brilliant payoff. And then when they get to the alternative 2025, Jay is basically this like super successful musician. I guess everything that Matt aspires to be. So much happens in this film too. I think that's what's also really funny, is that so much goes down in a relatively short amount of time, but it's not like scatterbrained either. It feels very contained and controlled. And if we want to talk about control too, I think probably one of the most impressive things about the film to me was the editing. I thought the editing was excellent in this movie. Like when they go back in time and they use the older footage, like the coordination between like lighting and continuity is really, really impressive as well. Like you feel like they're in the environment without the need of like CGI too. And the fact that the real people are informing the decisions of this script and editing that in a way where there's callbacks and that makes sense. It's like this big jigsaw puzzle almost. It's like Persona or something, where it's like, I couldn't imagine what this must have been like to edit together. And the fact that it's coherent is quite impressive.
Yeah. And like I said, like they just sell it very well. I mean, it really does feel like 2008 when they travel back in 2008. And it's like the fact that it's like it's like you're watching, it's like you swear they did this early on without like
that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's insane.
This is a 17-year-long project.
Yeah, it's insane. Like I'm really surprised on how they managed to like really make this whole film work. And I'm just loving like all the twists and turns. And I guess we could sort of jump into spoilers. So just skip through the next time code if you don't want to listen to spoilers. But anyway, I like the part in the film where, so initially they're sort of leading up to like the fact that like from a Matt's perspective, when, they get back to the alternative 2005, it's sort of like trying to create sort of like this little butterfly effect sort of thing where, Jay is a completely different person from that point on. And so it's like, okay, yeah, so typical time travel fair where, the person you were you were with no longer knows you. But then it sort of just has this twist that, yeah, sure, at points could feel really out of character, but really works because it is so funny on the steps that like Jay's taking just to avoid Matt Johnson's character throughout this part of the film. And it just works. And then like, the sort of realizations like, oh, this relationship's not, this relationship sort of made my life in some way. So there's like a lot of ingenuity, but I freaking lost it at the tour bus scene when he grabs the gun and thinks it's a pellet gun that actually shoots a guy. It's like, it's so insane. Like, how does this character sort of just come to that, decision, thinking that, oh, this is a pellet gun? It's like, no, it's not a pellet gun. And yeah, you could sort of see it from a mile away, but just the way it just sort of sets it up is hilarious. And, it also sort of reveals, like, yeah, maybe Jay is nothing without Matt Johnson in this film. And it's like, it's freaking funny, like, how that all kind of starts to unravel everything, and just the steps that it takes just to sort of, keep that comedic energy despite all like these really emotional, dramatic beats happening. It's freaking hilarious.
Well, we never explained how they even get back in time, because it's so stupid, but it's really funny. Like Matt accidentally spills the Orbitz drink he's trying to build he's actually trying to build a time machine, and Lord knows what his actual thought is on like the antidote for how to go back in time, but he accidentally spills Orbitz on to the time travel like flux capacitor thing, and that is what causes them to go back in time. But when they return to 2008, they're like, oh, we don't have any more Orbitz, but like, wait, I left them in the apartment. So that's what he does. They grab that, but then Jay goes back to destroy the canisters of Orbitz so that he could like continue this life. But and then they realize like, oh shoot, we need electricity, a la Back to the Future. So they decide, oh, we know when the lightning's gonna strike, because they just do a throwaway gag early in the movie. It's just like, oh, lightning just struck the CN Tower. Oh, okay, whatever. Then they just move on, and you forget that that's even a thing. And then it comes back at the end. It's like, oh, this is how they're gonna get back in time. So,
yeah, it's hilarious. And like, I think that stunt is more insane than like the stunt they pulled earlier in the film, where they are trying to skydive into the Rogers Center, but it's like the fact that they're like dragging this giant cord across like half of Toronto to hit one fuse box.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about something else, but I'm just like, that had to have been a special effect. But no, disregard. So,
but yeah, it's hilarious. I'm like, even if it was like, even if like, part of it was like a special effect or stage where, because I mean, in actuality, could they actually drag like a giant extension cord across Toronto? Which I mean, yeah, there could be some stuff that could be left up to suspension and disbelief, which I hope that is true. But you also got to think, like, did that make national news? But I was like, I really just lost it at the part where, they just ask like a random guy in the street just to watch the fuse box. And then he's just like looking at them like, what? It's like, yeah, that's where like the whole mockumentary sort of style works, is that, these people are so oblivious to like the stuff that Matt and Jay are doing, and, sort of just going along with it. Like, especially like when before they go into the CN Tower, they come across this girl from Brazil, and, Matt introduces himself to her or whatever, and like, okay, another throwaway joke, and then all of a sudden like they do it again. It's like they have to film these scenes back to back, because if I was this girl, I'd be like losing it. And like her reaction to him coming up a second time is hilarious. It's like the fact that they're really involving a lot of Toronto and like, the society, and just like it feels so grounded and realistic, despite the fact like, yeah, it's a very absurd comedy.
It goes to show too that there's some, doesn't matter the caliber of actor you get, well, maybe except Daniel Day-Lewis, like there's some things that you just cannot replicate with an actor. Like it needs to come from like a genuine person, like just not knowing they're being filmed. Like a genuine reaction is all the more effective than someone trying to act or impersonate that. And this movie is filled with so many people that you just know, like, okay, they're not putting on a performance. They don't realize they're being filmed. This is just them. And it makes it all the more believable, and it makes it all the more funny too. Like, I can't imagine what's going on in that guy's head who's like, when he gets, as you said, when he gets asked, like, hey, can you watch the fuse box? Like, what's that guy's story? Like, what does he think about this situation? And if this whole film were entirely fictional, I still think it would be pretty funny, but it wouldn't reach the level of hilarity that this film ensues. So, and I think even still, despite being a comedy, like, it does still work. The quote unquote dramatic moments, like the friendship between Matt and Jay, is genuinely sweet. And even with the end too, like where the film ends up, it's like, oh, that's super heartwarming. Like, this is not a cynical film, like, at all. It's not like edgy. It's not provocative. It's like, at its heart, it's a story about friendship. And I think that's really, really sweet. And even the buildup of when Jay and Matt try to go back to their present time with the lightning rod, it's a parody of the end of the climax of Back to the Future, but it's still just as suspenseful and tense. Like, you sense like, oh, like, are they going to get back? Like, are they going to be okay? Like, you get genuine emotions out of the film, which is also quite impressive and unexpected.
I mean, I think another like moment is like when Matt is trying to pull the cord toward the fuse box, and he grabs like somebody who's like French to help hold the cord, and I love how they like captured her reaction to like Matt saying these things. It's like, it's like it's a genuine thing, and like, yeah, the story is very genuine too. Like, even if you never seen the show, you could tell there's a relationship between Matt and Jay that is very heartwarming, and yeah, the film doesn't try to like do anything that feels smug or like, pretentious. It comes off like very heartwarming at the end and very genuine, and it's like it's a really probably one of the best comedies I've probably have seen in years. And yeah, sure, there's definitely been others. I wouldn't doubt it, but I'm just really impressed, like, just the level of like craftsmanship and passion just sort of put in to this film, even if it's sort of like, yeah, in hindsight, like, people probably just see it as a silly little comedy, but it's like, it's a really good comedy. So I think it's something you don't see often.
Definitely a comedy with effort and heart and legitimate passion too. It's refreshing to see that. Also, I know it's technically an adaptation, but it's, for most people, they've never heard of Nirvana, the band, the show. So for some, it is kind of a new original take on comedy, which is nice to see, because there's so many comedies that just feel so formulaic and kind of manufactured, or they're connected to a franchise, like the recent Naked Gun film, which I think is pretty great, honestly. That's still connected to an IP. Whereas here, yeah, it's technically an IP, but it's such a small IP that it acts so well individually that it fills that niche. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
I don't have much else to add, because like the entire time I was just like laughing. Like, it's just fun. So
I think, like, regardless of the audience you're with, it's like, I don't think there's going to be a situation where nobody's laughing. I mean, I think it's, like I said, I was only in a small crowd of like 10 people at 10 in the morning, and everybody was just losing their minds at everything going on. And yeah, I mean, in some cases it does sort of, appeal to a niche audience, but I feel like it could appeal to anybody. I mean, even if it's like the average person or the average moviegoer, I think they would love this film. Like, even if it's so simple and in the way it's made, I really enjoy it. So, final thoughts?
I don't know if I'd say it's like one of my favorite comedies like of all time, but if we're talking about the past 10 years, like, it's certainly up there. Like, probably within the past few years, like at least the 2020s, this Hundreds of Beavers and Bottoms are probably my favorite comedies of the decade. And I just really love it when a comedy's not only genuinely funny, but you can sense the passion, you can sense the effort, you can sense the dedication. And this film filled all those niches, but also in ways that were very daring and just unique. It's a unique type of comedy that I think almost anyone can enjoy. And even if you don't necessarily find it hilarious, you will probably laugh at least 5 times, like if not more. Like it's entertaining, whether it's in a crowd or by yourself. I highly, highly recommend it. And of course, it's early in the year, but it's my favorite movie of 2026 so far. So, yeah, I really, really liked it. It's a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, same here. I think 9 out of 10 is definitely where it is. I mean, maybe 10 out of 10 in the future if on a rewatch, but yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's insane on about how they pulled this whole film off. And, even if it's from a IP that, only appeals to a niche audience, but, I think it's people that deserve to I think it's a comedy that deserves to be watched by many. It's awesome. I mean, you don't see this level of appreciation and, passion for this type of filmmaking. And yeah, I mean, I think from front to back, this is one of the best comedies I've seen in years. I mean, certainly one of the best I've seen this year so far. And, I think it will hold true near the end of the year. And I mean, obviously we'll see, but I still think it's a great comedy. And yeah, really enjoyed it. So yeah, 9 out of 10. I'm really happy for my neighbors to the north. As somebody who came from Minnesota, so we're all good. So, all right. My rec.
Your recommendation.
Yep. Yeah. So this is a film I probably have watched endlessly throughout my youth. Because I've always been intrigued by this type of film, and that is Ocean's 11 from Steven Soderbergh. This came out in December of 2001, and keep in mind when this came out, Steven Soderbergh was a very prominent voice in the film industry. He's practically, I wouldn't say he's the reason for why independent films are the way they are today, but he was a big advocate for the independent film market. A lot of the films he released before this point, like Sex, Lies, and Videotape, and Kafka, King of the Hill, those were very big into the indie market. And then eventually he went into the studio stuff with Out of Sight, which is, where he started his friendship with George Clooney. And then the year before this film came out, he directed 2 films where he actually got nominated for Best Director for both of them that year, which was Aaron Brockovich and Traffic, which, both great films in their own right. But I was trying to think of what is a good film for you, Matthew, to get a good gist of Soderbergh's style and him at his highest level, his peak. And to me, even though I love Traffic, Out of Sight, and Aaron Brockovich, to me it's Ocean's 11. I mean, I adore this film completely. But yeah, tell me what your thoughts, at least on Soderbergh, at least from your limited time seeing his stuff.
Yeah, I haven't seen all of Soderbergh's films, but from what I've seen, I do really like his style. I think he's a very interesting filmmaker and a very, very versatile filmmaker. He does basically everything. Like he's done action films, he's done biographical dramas, he's done horror films, he's done a bit of everything. And this was actually one of my big blind spots because I had not seen this until we were going to record this. So it's been on my watch list for God knows how long. I think one of my good friends from high school, he was really pushing me to see this film, and I just never got around to it for some reason. And it's a heist film. It's also a remake of a film from the 60s, which I didn't see in prep for this, but it's one of those films that is a part of pop culture osmosis. It's pretty iconic for the early 2000s. And in that regard, I really liked it. I thought it was really, really a really good heist film that also establishes Soderbergh's foray into what you said, mainstream blockbusters, because this was probably was this his first major big budget studio film, or did he do stuff before? Because I don't remember.
I would
off the
say
top of my
so. I
head.
know Traffic and Aaron Brockovich were technically big studio films too, but I don't think they were quite on the level that Ocean's 11 was. I think this had like an $85 million budget,
'cause-
which is pretty high.
Yeah, and Ocean's 11, I would comfortably, and I don't mean this as an insult, would fit into the category of like popcorn mainstream entertainment, because like Aaron Brockovich, that's a pretty serious drama about like a real person, and Traffic is also in a similar boat. But this one is more just like, oh, this is one where you see it on the multiplex marquee. And it's the type of film that you want to watch while like slurping an icy and eating popcorn. It's that type of film, and I was really impressed with just how Soderbergh's style also was seen when he was operating with millions of dollars and just an insane cast. Like this is, we got George Clooney, Matt Damon, Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, Andy Garcia, Casey Affleck, Elliot Gould, Carl Reiner, Bernie Mac. Like or Don Cheadle. It's just an insanely stacked cast of characters and really talented actors too. So this is, you sense that Soderbergh got a lot of money to make this film, but he was still able to inject the flair and sort of like the cool nature of his films. And it's also interesting that last year Soderbergh directed Black Bag, which was one of my favorite films from last year. And that film was very much stripped back of like, okay, this is like Ocean's 11 without like any action. It's just people talking in rooms. And it's really, really, that in and of itself is thrilling. But Ocean's 11 is like, okay, this is what Black Bag is like almost parodying, or like stripping away everything. It strips away all the expectations of actually doing the heist or trying to find or the spy going on mission, sort of. Because right off the bat, like what I like about this film too is that it just starts. There's not a lot of filler. We introduce George Clooney, Danny Ocean. He gets out of prison and he wants to do a bank heist, or not. He wants to heist on the 3 casinos, and like that's it. Like that's your movie, and from there you just go, and it doesn't stop. It's very, very quick, and yeah, it's really fun. It's like a good way to describe it. It's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I really adore this film. As I said before, I mean, I watched this a lot growing up, and you know, I think it's like, you know, time has passed since I've like fully seen it. I mean, I've always continued to like think about watching it, and then it's like never got the time to. But it's like when I came back to it today, it's like, oh yeah, this to me is probably one of my personal favorite Soderberghs from his filmography, and probably to me this is a film that is very ubiquitous with like the heist movie. Because initially when they were making this, like they wanted to do a remake of the 1961 film, which I haven't seen initially. It was like Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack. It was initially, it was a remake that was, you know, decided in the 70s. I forgot by who. Hold on. It was by David Permew. Who wanted to make an adaptation, but, you know, it never was able to see the light of day in the 80s. But it wasn't until Steven Soderbergh was approached to make it. And, you know, obviously, like, yeah, I mean, he's proven, like, very much so proven, especially with, you know, Aaron Brockovich, Traffic, Out of Sight, like a lot of those films that he's made throughout the late 90s, early 2000s. And, you know, it's like he just given the resources to make something this impressive. Like, you know, like you said, the cast is incredible. Like, I think most people, like, you know, and yeah, sure, maybe commonplace to see, like, you know, George Clooney and Brad Pitt and Julia Roberts in many movies together. But at the time, it's like the fact that he got this level of talent just in casting in general is impressive. And just the way this film just sort of works with these actors and just how quick and to the point everything is from a script level is insane. I mean, I was really impressed with like how, you know, in some cases, like these characters outside of Clooney aren't given that much development, but so much is just said on their expressions. Like you can get instantly what they're thinking, what they're doing, and a lot of that is attributed to the dialogue, but most of that is attributed to how these actors really sell these characters. I mean, to me, this is probably the quintessential George Clooney role. When I think of George Clooney, I think of Ocean's 11. I know people think of ER, which, that's where he got his start. But to me, it's Ocean's 11 because this is where, when I think of George Clooney, I think of the suave, charismatic male lead. And this is something he completely embraces in this role. And everybody else just does such an excellent job really playing off him, especially Brad Pitt. Like the fact that there are points where it's like they just don't break eye contact with each other and just show so much chemistry is insane. Like just the actor chemistry is really, really impressive. And it's like, I can't get enough of these one-liners and the way these actors interact with one another. It is just amazing.
Yeah, you make a good point about how the personalities and the charisma of all the actors is what really sells the film, because I would agree that there are some, especially more the minor characters that are part of Ocean's like entourage. Like some of them are, you kind of forget they're there just because they have one specific skill set. Like the I forget the character. See, I even forget the character's name, but the Asian guy, the one who does like the flips and stuff. Like, okay,
the amazing,
yeah. Like he's really just there because of his acrobatic skills. But even then, it's like he still has like a likable screen presence. Like you like seeing all these characters on screen just interacting with each other. And I agree in terms of the charisma, like just everyone's just like off the charts. Like George Clooney in particular, like even though he's this ex-con and he's got a lot of history with Julia Roberts too, but immediately you understand like this is his desire. Like he just he loves the thrill of the heist. It's almost like every heist that he does, it's a game for him. Like it's not necessarily that he's doing it for himself, but he wants to one up himself. But it's also refreshing that his character, he's not really egotistical. Like you sense that he just try to like look out for people as much as he can, but you like seeing him on the screen. And even though I hadn't seen this film until now, like when I heard George Clooney, I would think about Ocean's 11 as being one of the prime examples of his talent and star power. And while I'm not sure if I would say this is his best acting role, it's definitely one of his most memorable characters that really sells his charm and why he was such a big star, especially during this era.
Yeah, and it's like, and the chemistry just like between all 11 of them, because, it would have been very difficult to try to make a movie where, you dive into each of the backstories of the Ocean's 11 team. And which, would have been long. So I like that, once you get this film rolling, you instantly get the personalities of these characters. Like, and like I said, you have great actors to play them. I mean, the late Bernie Mac, like, is great here. I mean, Brad Pitt, I mean, how many calories do you think Brad Pitt had from eating all the junk food in this movie? Probably a lot, And I mean, just like every actor, just and how they're introduced in these scenes is amazing. I think one of my favorite moments when it comes to like character introduction, or at least like character moment, was when Brad Pitt is like sitting at the bar in between a poker game. And, the bartender is asking like, how's the game going? And it's like longest game of my life. And it's like, what? And it's like running away with your wife. And it's just like, just the way he just sells that line is just amazing. And it's just like so much character is just given just through the expressions alone. And then of course, like the filmmaking is impressive too. Like just the camera work and just these dolly shots, these handheld shots, these aerial shots, like they really paint a picture of this setting that is really impressive, and it's probably the best use of like the film grain I've seen from this era of filmmaking, because when you see like these aerial shots of like Las Vegas and you seeing this grain, it's like, wow, you really feel it feels so at home in this setting. Like it just fits perfectly.
Yeah, and also I really like how one of my favorite like stylistic decisions, and it's super well, there's two that stood out that are very simple but super super effective. I love that when the first scene is Danny getting out of prison, and it shows him in the prison, and it's very cold, it's very sterile. It almost looks like a music video almost from that era, where it's like the blacks, it's super dark and the blues are very pronounced. But then as soon as he gets out of the jail and we see the Atlantic City casino and how bright and vibrant it is, it's just like, whoa, this is like a totally different world. And it just the lights, the bulbs that are shining, it really just pops. And then also too, in the heist, when it's George Clooney and Matt Damon, when they're in that like silo of the lasers, which seemed like it took influence from the first Mission Impossible film. And then when they turn off the power, like the music is blaring from like the wrestling match that's going on. But then when all the power goes out, the music stops and you just hear the sound design and the music kicks back on when the power goes back. I was like, that's a great detail that really puts you in the headspace of the characters. And it's like details like that make me really like Soderbergh as a director, is that he does like to play around with that type of stuff. And you could tell that he's looked over every scene to see like, okay, how can we make this stand out from not just being too traditional or conventional? It's refreshing to see that in a studio project, because we expect that more from like a independent auteur, for example, or in a way what Soderbergh has been doing recently, because he hasn't done major studio projects in quite a while. He's more kind of like stripped back to like mid to low budget films. But to see that when you in a movie like this, where you got big A-list actors and like $80 million to play around with, like it's cool. It's cool to see that. So
Yeah, and it's like it's just such a good use of his style. I mean, and because initially, like, you know, I was watching the behind the scenes before today, and it was something like stated where, you know, he wanted to sort of jump in to do a film that was just sort of for fun, because obviously, like, you know, Traffic and Aaron Brockovich sort of deal with like, you know, very dramatic and biographical subject matter. And so this is kind of going back to the point where he was with Out of Sight, where, you know, which is, you know, another great film that he's done, where, you know, it's relying on this sort of 70s pastiche, but a story that, you know, is sort of a send up of like the 1940s heist films, but bringing it into the modern era. And so the 70s pastiche really fits in with this setting very well, because it's like Vegas just looks so vibrant and lush. And, you know, the thing I do like about this as well is like they filmed this like in these casinos, like, you know, the producer.
Oh yeah, you could tell.
Yeah, like the Jerry Weintraub, the producer, was like friends with the owner of the Bellagio, so they were filming this in the casinos, and they had to film it like from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., which, you know, to the advantage of the fact that casinos do not have windows, because that's intentional, because, you know, they want to keep you inside as long as they can. So when you like walk out of a casino after being in there for a long time, it's already dark out. So they took that time frame to the advantage. And, you know, there's people walking in the background that are not actually extras. They're real people. And so it makes this setting feel more authentic and grounded. And it just works so well. And then the heist plot line is just incredibly written. I mean, it's a sense where it's like it's a step ahead of you every single moment. Like, and every single time, like, you think it's going to dive into like a cliche or an expected cliche, somehow the film just keeps one-upping you in terms of your expectations. Like, it's a good subversion on how this whole heist plot line is working and how all these characters are reacting to things that are potentially going to go wrong. And it's just an insane way of like the film being a step ahead of its audience, like really bringing you on this ride, and how they're just being able to pull off this crazy heist.
Yeah, and it also plays into the strengths of each of the characters too. Like everyone's smart. Like everyone, there's a scene early on when Danny's sort of going over the plan, and they're asking like legitimate questions about like how are we going to walk out of the casino with all the money without being stopped, like prompting these questions for not necessarily for the audience, but it's like you could tell the audience is probably thinking about this in the back of their head, but the film is aware of that. Like it's one step ahead of you in that regard, as you said. So yeah, and so it's funny. It's a funny film too. There's a lot of really good one-liners, but it's also you sense that they actually took time and consideration into planning out this heist, and the fact that like, oh, this really goes to show how smart and detail-oriented that Danny Ocean is. He thought of everything. He knew these guys like inside and out to the point where he could pull off something as amazing as this. So.
And yeah, it really just adds like a level to these characters because, you know, especially like the Matt Damon character, Linus, not being super trusting of everybody. And, you know, he's trying to go on his like own page. And it's like the fact that like, you know, and I guess we could sort of dive into spoilers. So initially, like, you know, Rusty, Brad Pitt's character, tells Danny that he can't, you know, go on the heist because, you know, sort of a conflict of interest he has with Julia Roberts' character in this film, because they obviously were, you know, they're a divorced couple, and, you know, she's dating the Terry Benedict, the guy who owns the casino. And so, like, you know, Rusty tells him, you know, you're not going to come on this heist. And so it makes you think like, oh, like, yeah, he'll eventually pop up back again, but it's how he pops up again. And it sort of adds like a level of character to like Matt Damon, where it's like, yeah, he's not necessarily a very trusting individual either, because he thinks like anything is going to go wrong and he's got to have a contingency plan to get out of it. And so there's like a lot of good moments where in that part of the scene where it's like, you know, he realizes like, oh, you've why couldn't you tell me this? And it's like, you know, and it works like because it's sort of like along Matt Damon, like, you know, and I guess Matt Damon's character is just sort of a lens for the audience in some ways, but we're sort of like figuring out like more about this plan, and it's like how much of a step ahead Danny Ocean is of everybody else in this film. It's insane just the level of like meticulous detail the screenwriters really put into like creating the story, and it's really impressive on how Steven Soderbergh just made it very tight, concise, and just impressively shot as it is. It's just one of those films like I just can gush about all day. It's amazing.
Yeah, it also details to the history every character has. Like you can tell that everyone is, at least the main characters, they've known each other for quite a long time, and it feels very believable. Like they don't feel like they're just characters written like, or they've only met for an hour. It's like, no, they go back. They go a long time back, and yeah, it's the believability and I guess the likability of the characters too.
Yeah, and I mean, and I also like just enjoy like how these characters interact. Like I think I never had a hard time believing that Casey Affleck and Scott Conn were brothers in this film, because like the fact that they're both just arguing with one another like adds like such a good sense of comedic levity, but it's also like that, you know, Danny Ocean sort of using the Malloy brothers as like a way to, you know, using their weakness, which is, you know, arguing with one another, as a strength to sort of like get access to these places. And it's really hilarious on how they interact. And Don Cheadle's British accent, it's not good, but it's a hilarious British accent. Yeah, he wasn't actually credited.
Like,
in
oh
this
boy,
film.
that is not a good accent.
No, definitely not.
Wait, say that again.
He actually wasn't credited in this film. Like, there was some sort of contract dispute that happened off screen, and so I guess he wanted to have his name next to George Clooney because he was I guess like at the time he was becoming a big
I think Clooney
name.
was pretty well established at this point.
Yeah,
so.
he was very well established, and I guess some things happened where his name was he decided not to have his name on the final name credited in the film, but he did get credited in the sequels. But yeah, this is something that is I always find very interesting. But still like really good performance like from him, really from everybody here. I mean, Carl Reiner's character is also really solid as well, and just like this whole like group of these guys, just there is such a chemistry with all of them, despite the fact that they only known each other for probably like a day or two, or with some only knowing each other for years. It's really impressive on how they all work together, and just to make this very complicated heist work. It's really impressive.
And at the end of the day, like when we see the heist go down, it's satisfying. Like in my notes, I wrote down like there's, especially during the whole heist when that undergoes, like my notes were super limited because I was just so engaged with the film. I just want to see this play out. Like I want to get like distracted. I just want to like watch and see what happens. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really like intriguing, it's engaging. And then I think once all is like said and done with like what happened in this film, it's like I really love like when they're like, walking out of the SWAT vehicle at the end, and they're like watching the fountains over at the Bellagio, and it's such a good moment and a great choice of music, just using the Clair de Lune by Claude Debussy in the background. And just ending. That is, to me, that's beautiful movie magic, and just the dolly shot and the dolly pan of like these characters just watching these fountains kind of just fly around, and it's a really like emotionally great sequence. Like you just sort of feel all this like weight coming off your shoulders, and it works so well. Like a really, really good moment.
Yeah, it's like you've been on this like crazy ride, and then when it's all done, you like revel in the accomplishment, but it's like, oh, now we're all going our separate ways. Like our job is done. Like maybe see you in the future. Like it's a bit bittersweet almost, where there's this huge victory, but then they're not going to stick around for the remainder of the time. It's just like, yep, maybe see you again someday. It was nice. It was a nice way to sort of like ease into the ending after just like all this, not necessarily madness, but just the fast-paced tension that's been going on. So
it just works so well. And I think part of what makes it so tense too is I think it's Andy Garcia's performance as Terry Benedict is also really solid. He may seem like a typical villain, or like some sort of just a straightforward like big boss character, but he sells like this intimidation very well. I think and the fact that like he's just on it, like he just is always around the floor kind of surveilling and keeping eyes on everybody. It's like, and I like how Danny Ocean sort of just tries to find ways to sort of counteract like his big boss nature and try to put him off schedule or take him off track. Is just amazing. And just the realization that he has like once he knows that something is going wrong is like incredibly well acted. Like there's just never a dull moment with any of this cast. Like even like the celebrity cameos in the beginning, like that is really impressive on how everybody takes this whole storyline so seriously.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just curious, how do the sequels compare to this? Because I've only seen this one. I haven't dove into the Oceans franchise.
Ocean's 12 is seen by most to be the worst one, and I think that's just because it tries to do a lot to subvert, but doesn't really work in the long run. I mean, the chemistry of the cast is still great, but it sort of just is inferior to Ocean's 13 is slightly better, but it just doesn't have as many surprises as this one does. Like, I've probably seen this film much more than I have seen the sequels, and I'm always like feeling the sense of shock and surprise, like as like the plot keeps rolling itself out, and I remain impressed with like how everything is going on. And I never got the gist about that with Ocean 13, although I would say it is much better than Ocean's 12. I have not seen Ocean's 8. Soderbergh only produced it, so he didn't really have much of a directing role in it. It's just more producer. But I mean, I've heard good things about it. I know it comes out of like an era where everybody's like gender swapping characters, which it's not an issue to do that, but obviously it was sort of a gimmick that Hollywood was using at the time and sort of trying to take advantage of a demographic that they were obviously trying to plead to. I haven't seen it, so I can't really speak on what the quality of the film. I just know it came out in that era of Hollywood where they're trying to really appease to a certain demographic. But yeah, I mean, this one still to me remains the best. I honestly fine with that. I don't think we really need to have another Ocean's 11, personally. So
okay, yeah, no, I was always under the impression that the first one was the best one, but I never really knew if the other ones were worth like checking out. Like, it's not like one was like vehemently despised or anything. It was more just like, yeah, they're just not as good, but they're also not terrible.
Yeah,
it's just kind of like
yeah, like even like the second one, even if it's considered to be the worst, like I don't think it's like the worst thing ever. I mean, I think it's just, I think it still has like strong moments of star chemistry in it, like this one does. But yeah, I mean, initially it's not a bad franchise. I think it's just that this one's probably is still the better one out of the four I've seen. I can't speak on Ocean's 8, but it seems like it's still holding true.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I finally got around to it. It's been on my watch list for a while, and I agree. I think it's a really, really solid heist film, and one where you could throw it on and just have a good time watching it. It's not that you'd have to be like super, super attentive, but it has enough substance there where it's like it's an engaging, good watch. So yeah, I'm glad you recommended it, and I think it's an 8. I give it an 8 out of 10. I think that's a fair score.
Awesome. I think initially I had this out of like a 9 out of 10, but I think when I watched it today, and yeah, sure, it could be like the fact that I watched it there, but I think honestly it's deserving of a 10. I mean, I think it's just a treat front to back. I mean, I think to me it contains the best of Steven Soderbergh's style filmmaking. I mean, he just had the 70s pastiche just works a charm for this type of film and this setting. And, you can't get a cast better than this. I mean, the fact that, they managed to get these stars with Clooney, Pitt, and Julia Roberts, all in the same film while they were just hitting their peaks as actors is really impressive. And, it just shows like, the level, like, what Steven Soderbergh could do with an $85 million budget. And it's impressive, and just the way it's made, and it's an emotionally gripping story that really can take you on a good ride. And, just a great cast all around and great direction all around. So yeah, 10 out of 10. Better than quotations Wuthering Heights.
Yeah, there's a lot of movies that are better than Wuthering Heights.
Most definitely. Yep. I'm glad we had a 2 out of 3 today. At least in terms of quality. A good comedy and a really good comedy. Both were actually really good comedies at the end of the day. Yeah. One different types.
Yeah. I was actually pleasantly surprised at how funny Ocean's 11 was. I was not expecting that. I thought it was more serious. That was what I expected.
I mean, Another favorite line, also from Brad Pitt, is when Matt Damon asks him a question, and it's like, do you ever feel suicidal? And it's like, only in the morning.
Oh yeah, only in the morning. That was a good line.
I think Brad Pitt gets like the best lines in these films. Really, really awesome. All right, believe it's your turn for the next recommendation.
Yeah, so I went back and forth, and I decided to pick a film after having such a lovely time with Wuthering Heights, and how that tried to be a sort of deconstructive romance and pretty much failed at it. I was reminded of another film that also is a deconstructive romance that I find to be one of the best romance films ever. And it just so happens that recently, the filmmaker involved has made another great film that we both really love and has been talked about quite often. We talked about it actually before. And the film that I'm recommending is The Worst Person in the World, 2021, by Joachim Trier. So,
yeah, oddly enough, I have not seen this. I've been meaning to see it. It's been a blind spot.
Okay, good.
So, but yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really excited.
Okay, actually, I'm now more happy that I recommended it because I honestly did not remember if you'd seen it.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I know other colleagues have seen it of ours, but I oddly enough I missed it. I've been meaning to watch it. I know it was a big deal when it came out, but yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, this is one that I remember I so badly wanted to talk about on Bijou Banter, and we never did, unfortunately. So making up for that now.
Very much so. Definitely one I'm really excited to talk about. And if you want to listen to us talk about The Worst Person in the World from Joachim Trier, feel free to watch the film before we jump into the next episode. Most definitely we'll be talking about spoilers. And also, if you haven't yet, we have social media. We got Instagram, Letterboxd, and Twitter. So feel free to follow us there. Links are in the description. And of course, we have our own personal social medias in the description as well. And yeah, get excited for the next couple of films we'll be talking about. And yeah, let's keep this train rolling. Otherwise, like, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day
for sure.
or night. Stay warm.
Yep. See you guys in the next one.